Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Groundhog's Day, everyone. I hear that Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow, which means 6 more weeks until spring. I want to thank all of you for being here today on what I hope will be a very special celebration of one of my favorite MGM stars, Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly passed away 25 years ago today, which is hard to believe. I'm going to take you back to 13-year-old Ricky Skipper in Conway, South Carolina, right off the tobacco farms. That year, the film That's Entertainment opened. And I remember my parents dropped me off at the Holiday Theater on Main Street in Conway, and I went to see That's Entertainment. And when Gene Kelly hit the screen, a jolt of electricity went through me, and I could not wait to learn everything I could about him. There's so much that's out there that's inaccurate, but today we have Patricia Ward Kelly here with us to set the record straight on so many of those inaccuracies. But today is all about celebrating Gene Kelly, his legacy of work, his legacy of worth. What made him so great on screen? Well, all you have to do is just look at him, and the rest, you're going to get that same jolt of electricity. Take a look.
Not many people have diamonds in their feet.
When I arrive in any town, I look the ladies up and down. And when I pick my favorite flame, this is my pattern, no matter her name.
What makes you think putting on a show is just a lot of laughs? You ought to try it sometime.
Nina, 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 fascinating Nina, what a lovely child. Nina, you enchant me, Nina, you're so sweet, I mean ya, fairly drive me wild. Nina, till the moment you hit my heart, Nina, I was doing just fine. But since I've seen ya, Nina, 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 I'll be having neurasthenia till I make you mine, till I make you, till I make you mine, till I make you mine, till I make you mine.
So you see, you've got nothing to worry about.
That's the Broadway
Isn't that incredible?
That's great. That's very well done. Thank you.
Yes, Chuck Pennington put them together, so I want to give a shout out to him. I was thinking about the last time that you and I saw each other. I was lucky enough to interview you for my blog several years ago. I've moved on to a whole new platform. And you were in New York for a screening of, they were doing a lot of Gene Kelly's films, but I was able to be there for Hello, Dolly, which has a special place in my heart, as you know. But I want to ask you before we talk about Gene Kelly, I know today is a very bittersweet day for you. How are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world we find ourselves in?
It's interesting. Yes, today is an odd day. It's funny because I usually don't even like to schedule things on this day because it seems like an odd day. You know, do you celebrate today? But in fact, I think it's a nice opportunity, and I thank you for it to just again refocus people's eyes on Gene and remind them of this extraordinary legacy and how contemporary he is when you look at that video. When you think of the fact that he died 25 years ago, but he's still so current and so cool and so hot. I mean, it's really, I think, a testament to the fact that he was so far ahead of his time, so innovative in all that he did, and had the great fortune of being terribly handsome, I would say, as well, and had a contemporary look. I mean, his clothing and everything, it's all still current. So, but the pandemic has been awful. All of my tribute shows about Gene, I have a one-woman show that's been touring for 8 years, and then the big live symphony show that is the music played live to the clips that we premiered in 2018 with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, and then went to Dublin with it, and it was just headed out. It was going to roll out this last year and this year, and we've had to cancel everything. But we'll get back out, I think, next year, which will be great, and we'll be able to really get people in theaters again. And I think people are really yearning for Gene Kelly. I certainly noticed it in the pandemic because his films were always at the top of the lists of the to-watch films, the 10 films to watch in quarantine. And I think people are looking for the kind of joy that he brings, the kind of integrity, the decency, the humanity. And so I took advantage of this time. Since I can't go outside and do anything, I decided it was time to get back to work on the book that he hired me to write back after I met him in 1985. I thought it was time to get that finished. So I've been focusing on that and getting the archives, spending more time in the archives, and hope to get those things out next year as well, so that we have a lot of things to celebrate.
And you always have a platform right here. Just remember that. But, two thoughts run through my head right now. Years ago, Betty Comden and Adolph Green did a screening of, they were showing Singing in the Rain and The Bandwagon. And someone, after watching The Bandwagon, stood up in the audience and said, "That film still looks so contemporary. How were you able to do that?" And Betty Comden, without missing a beat, said, "Well, one day I woke up, I called Adolph Green, and I said, let's do a film that's going to be contemporary and will be still contemporary 25 years from now." But it's this, when great work is great work is great work. When you go to a museum and you see great artistry, it still resonates with all of us. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot with what I'm about to say, but I have such admiration for you on so many levels because, I mean, yes, you were married to Gene Kelly. You have this wonderful relationship with him, but you have devoted your life to sharing that with his fans. And I'm not going to mention names, but some people, have held the purse strings so tightly with the legacy of the people that they are in control of after those people have left us. And I really want to applaud you I follow you on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and that daily you're putting information out about Gene Kelly, and you are building that fan base even larger, if that's possible, than what it already is. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And it's interesting because I had very specific, I've used the term marching orders from Gene, and he was very specific about how he wished to be remembered as somebody behind the camera more than in front of the camera. And a lot of people don't even realize that he was behind the camera and that he was a director and choreographer. And Hello, Dolly is a great example. I just posted a picture of Gene with Barbara Streisand, and a lot of people said, I never knew he directed that. And so I think that it's very important. He will always be wonderful up there on the screen, but I think it's very important for people to understand the contributions that he made behind the camera, and the real innovations in the use of the camera in capturing dance, and the way that he changed the whole look of dance and created a particularly American style of dance and an American style of costume, the way that he dressed that was very different from his predecessors. So So it kind of started out as something that I wanted to. I mean, Gene basically said, if anybody's going to do this, it will be you to get this information out. And as I started going out, I realized that people had no idea the many dimensions of this man. They saw him as kind of one-dimensional. He's gorgeous up on the screen. He's charming, but they didn't realize that he spoke French, Italian. He read Latin. He was an economics major. He very often read a book a day. He was that very cerebral man, and they also don't realize what kind of man he was. The kind of, I think they see this very cocky, cocksure guy up on the screen, and they don't realize the real humility in this man and the way that he always choreographed to make his partners look their best and things. So what has evolved, when I went onto social media, initially I was kind of afraid. I thought, oh God, this is going to be
all were.
And what has developed is this incredible community of people that respond so thoughtfully and have really, it has become this kind of reciprocal relationship that I think is very healthy. And it kind of reminds me of why Gene preferred being on stage than in the movies, because he realized that audience was important, that you play off of that audience. It's a give and take, and so much of that is missing in the movies. But in this, it's interesting, and I think in this lockdown, I really have felt this, that it's people will say thank you for what you're doing, but really I'm saying thank you because if they weren't there, there is no there. So
that's right.
So it really is. And I many of the comments, I come away, I take screenshots, and I come away thinking of things in a different way, seeing him in a different way. So I have one comment too about your comment about Betty Comden and Bandwagon and Singin' in the Rain. Gene used to say that it was very, very difficult to make something that was both contemporary and timeless. And I think today's filmmakers have contemporary down, sort of, but I really wonder how many films we'll be watching. This year happens to be the 70th anniversary of An American in Paris. Next year will be the 70th anniversary of Singin' in the Rain. I wonder how many movies that people will be watching 70 years from now. And
you bring up a very interesting point that, excuse me for interrupting, but when That's Entertainment came out, it had been only 20 years since Gigi had come out. Did you realize that? Yeah. And the fact that here we were 20 years later celebrating the legacy of a studio and the body of work that came out of that studio. And I can't imagine going back 20 years ago from this point that we're in right now, to 2000 and celebrating the films of that year. How many films can we even name at this point that came out that year?
It's a different business, I think. And I think one of the things to credit Betty Comden and Adolph Green, when you look at a film like Singin' in the Rain, I've introduced it so many times. And every time I sit in the audience and I know what's coming, and I know where, and the laughs come. And it's every age. It's 3 years old to 103 years old. And I don't think there are many films that covered that large a demographic, an economic strata too. I don't think there's no distinction of wealth or class or men or women. It's enjoyed by everybody. And I have to credit Betty and Adolph a lot in that, because humor is such an interesting thing, because humor so often can dictate where a film fits. People will go, oh, that's really 70s humor or 80s humor, and their humor lasts. It's still funny, and it's funny around the world. And I think that is very, very, very difficult to accomplish. So a lot of the credit is due to those two and their remarkable writing. I mean, as Gene always said, it was a collaborative effort. There was no auteur, no single person. It was this wonderful amalgamation of people that you had all under one roof at MGM. And I think that's part of the problem now, is that in order to make a film, a musical, it's so expensive, and so you have to pull all of this talent from all around the world. And there they just walked next door in the next office. And you had Irene Sharaff, you had the great Saul Chaplin, and you had Roger Edens, and you had just
Arthur Freed.
Arthur Freed, and all these people under one roof, and they were able to commingle and communicate. And I think that's very, very difficult, because now you have conglomerates basically running filmmaking. So you have General Electric, and you have a very different type of thing. So I wish that there were a way to kind of recreate that kind of stable of talent. Damien Chazelle, my buddy, did it with La La Land. He rented a place out in the valley and had all of the people under in this kind of warehouse, and to try to approximate that. And I think, but again, that took a lot of money and a lot of, risk. It's risk taking now, because people want to go with what will be a sure seller. So they tend to go with these blockbusters or remaking something for the fourth, fifth, sixth installment. And you need visionaries for this. You need real artists and visionaries.
I want to talk for a moment about collaboration, because he collaborated with so many great artists at MGM. In your conversations with him, what are some of the thoughts about some of the people that he worked from, and who did he consider his mentors? Who were the people that he looked up to for inspiration?
Well, the mentors were from Broadway. So John Murray Anderson and Robert Alton as a choreographer, and who recognized that Gene was trying to do something very unique with choreography, and basically told him, go ahead, do it. And John Murray Anderson was this extraordinary man who taught Gene so much, he said, about the nuances of movement and the use of lights and staging and everything. And then Gene was like a sponge, picking up everything from everybody. So mentor might not be the right word, but hero might be the right word for people like Douglas Fairbanks Sr., Lon Chaney, Buster Keaton, showing Gene that a man could move, be this great, show this daring do, but also this great grace and in movement. And someone like Bill Robinson, Bojangles, that Gene saw in Pittsburgh, that Gene absorbed a lot of those steps. But coming to Hollywood, I think he was looking for all kinds of, he was trying to find people and study how to use the camera, but nobody was really experimenting with that. Busby Berkeley was doing it to some degree, and Gene absorbed all of that knowledge. But Gene, instead of wanting to choreograph 100 violins, wanted to choreograph for the human body and tell a story, instead of just creating this kind of kaleidoscopic image. He wanted the dance to propel the plot, and that was very new. I mean, it was really, you cannot cut Gene's numbers out of the films and have the story told, whereas before you could essentially just cut these numbers out and it didn't really affect the story. So, he had great collaborations. Obviously, Vincent Minnelli was a great partner. I think they really complemented one another. They had great respect for each other. So there was a kind of, Gene was a kind of the broader strokes. Gene said that, for example, in the American in Paris Ballet, Gene was the named director on that and choreographer. But they would have it all set up, and then Minnelli would just stop and then go in and move one person in the background over, a little bit or some little detail. Gene would be like, what? And then he'd look at it and in the camera and he'd say, it was an improvement. So he had an eye for this impeccable detail and color. And then the costume people like Irene Sharaff, with that Gene would work with, who understood that Gene was trying to show the longest line of the body and reveal. So there was really a collaboration. For example, on the ballet, it was Gene, Irene, and Vincent Minnelli in choosing the artists who were represented and how they're represented. And so I think this kind of dialogue between artists was exceptional then. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of an example now where you have that kind of cross-pollination in all of the different, with the art directors and everything.
It's great. I'd like to share with everyone a little, another little compilation that we put together, celebrating the innovation that Gene Kelly brought to film. So enjoy.
Wait a minute. Stop!
And so much fun to watch. Go ahead.
Well, that was a good choice on the alter ego number in CoverGirl, because that really was the pivotal moment in Gene's career that changed his whole trajectory. And that was really, as he always said, that it was not only the hardest thing that he did on film, but it was also the moment that he decided to stay in Hollywood. He would never intended to stay here. He always assumed he would head back to Broadway. And it was that struggle and trying to learn how to use the camera to capture the two-dimensional figures, and to dolly and pan in double exposure was just, he then said, okay, I'm going to stick around, and I'm going to, in his words, try to lick that thing. He called the camera a one-eyed monster, because you did lose the third dimension with the camera. People forget that. They think, I don't think people looking at Gene's films think, oh, the bodies look really flat. And that's because he tried to come up with ways to make the bodies appear three-dimensional, things like the use of light and color in the American and Paris Ballet, and then this kinetic energy of literally coming at the camera, running. You often see him coming at the camera and quite literally taking the dance into the streets, so that he had a greater mobility than what you often saw was just staged on the proscenium stage, and the camera was stationary. And he was able then to move the camera, and it became one of the dancers like those on film. So CoverGirl was the turning point, and interestingly, it was the one that.
So, what kind of a dog do you have? I have to ask.
Here, Isabella, come here. She's very famous. Isabella, come here. Come on. She's the one that when Damien Chazelle came here. Come here. Come on. I have two. There's one hiding under the desk, but this is the famous one. She's a little rescue, and she's considered a Chihuahua lab, but this is Isabella. And
gorgeous.
Isabella, Damien Chazelle came here to the house with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, and the choreographer Mandy Moore to go into the archives to research for La La Land, and I said, just make sure you don't open the gates so the dogs don't get out. And Ryan accidentally opened the gate, and it was this fantastic scene of Ryan Gosling chasing Isabella up the street, and Damon actually caught her. I'm so sorry about this thing.
No, please. It adds to the atmosphere of what we're doing. I love it.
They're very funny on the Graham Norton show. You can go on the Graham Norton show and Google Ryan Gosling almost kills Gene Kelly's wife's dog, and it's very funny because Ryan's fantastic. And come here, guys, come here.
I'm going to check that out. But I mean, getting back to what you were saying, and I've heard a quote, and you can clear this up. I think this is attributed to Gene, and that was that. When you can no longer tell the story in mere words, you sing it. And when you can no longer sing it, you dance it. Is that actually a Gene Kelly quote?
No. Well, I mean, that's kind of taken, that's sort of a version of You Wonderful You, and which is interesting because it's a beautiful number with Judy Garland, and it in a weird way that the dialogue summarizes what Gene is trying to do with dance, so that it's more part of the movie. But when I watch it, I always think, wow, that's exactly what he's trying to do. He's saying I love you without saying I love you. He uses the movement to convey his emotions and things, and I love it. When Judy says, well, why don't you just say it? and you're just melting right there, because it's just so, the two of them too, the chemistry of those two.
Well, that gives us to our next segment. I would like to share this with you. Judy and Gene.
I didn't know any.
They are just magic together.
Yeah, believe me, I had no idea you had that prepared. It was a nice segue. But I love watching them, and the chemistry between the two is palpable, and I think they adored each other. And again, it's that respect quality, I think, when you can see these two. I describe them as comets. These are people that they shoot through the air once and you don't see them again. You don't have another Judy Garland, you don't have another Gene Kelly. And I just love that Gene talked about her with me often. He spoke about her often, and he said he thought she was the brightest woman in Hollywood and also the sexiest woman, which I think is very interesting, because when you really look at the newspaper articles about her, she was literally described as an ugly duckling, and
that was incorporated even in the scripts when she was a young child.
Yeah, I don't think you really focus on some of the biopics and things. You don't come away with the sense of the majesty of this woman and the brain. I mean, I think that you get kind of more of a train wreck kind of thing. And I think Gene just said she had the quickest brain, and she could memorize something in an instant. And she knew all of the Tin Pan Alley songs. She just had this range. And then also it was really Judy who taught Gene how to perform in front of a camera, because he had no experience with it. He initially thought it would be like acting on the stage. And she said, no, it's not the same. And she taught him how to kind of crouch down and to get into a chair and things like that. And he said she had a sixth sense about where that camera was, and was quite funny about instructing him and teaching him how to kiss on screen and things like that. He tried to do a fake stage kiss, and she said, no, the camera's right there and it sees. And so I really think she deserves so much credit, and their work together, I think, is obviously some of the best that we see.
But when you see the two of them together, she's such a phenomenal dancer. And when people think of Judy Garland, dancer is not at the top of the list, at least in their consciousness of who Judy Garland was. I mean, did they spend a lot of time in rehearsing, or you just said she picked up things very quickly? Was she able to do that with dance as well?
Well, Gene always choreographed to his partner, so he choreographed to make her look terrific, as he did with everybody. And he said that, for example, she would pick it up if she sensed that he was trying to give her easier steps, and she'd say, no, make it harder. And she was really pushing for that, because sometimes when he felt she was sort of struggling in a picture, he would try to ease off a bit, and she wouldn't have any of that. So, but they rehearsed, and she was like Sinatra. I mean, Frank trained like a prize fighter, Gene said, and Judy she was pushing and wanted to learn how to do these things. So she was studying it, but I love them together. I mean, I have her in my shows, and I forget sometimes. I sit on the stool on the stage to watch, and I get so absorbed. Sometimes I'm just looking at them, and then I realize, oh shoot, I've got to get up and talk again, because they're just you can't help but take your eyes off of them and listen to them. I mean, the same thing might be said. Gene isn't known so much as a singer, and yet the two of them, his voice works in that kind of vulnerability that he has, and the vulnerability that she had in her voice. So I love them together. I really. And the pirate, I mean, the cheekiness of the pirate.
That is one of my favorite films.
Yeah, mine too. And it gets a bad rap in the books, and I think we just need to dismiss all of that, because it's just not, it doesn't fit the movie. It's glorious. And I think that the wit and humor and the between the two of them is so funny, and this intense sensuality of it. It has, and the color, the lush Technicolor, and I love it. And all
they're just hysterical together.
Yeah, well, the nods to Douglas Fairbanks and John Barrymore, that sometimes people don't get all of those. Although when I do screen Nina, I mean, people laugh and they get the nod to the Gaucho and Fairbanks Gaucho, and yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's fun. It's joyful fun. It's just this incredible sensual experience. Yeah.
Now, Patricia, I'm all about celebrating, so I don't want to knock anything that anyone else has done. But there are a lot of books that are out about Gene Kelly, and yes, and I'm not going to mention any of them, but what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about Gene Kelly based on what's been written about him?
Well, I think, I would begin by not reading any of the books and not reading anything on the internet, because it is really inaccurate. And I always think about it, there's kind of a grand irony, because I get very angry at the bad information in the books. But the irony is that had the biographies been terrific, Gene wouldn't have brought me out to write his story. So it's a funny kind of twist there. But I think the thing that comes out now that I think is really unfair and unfortunate is the misconception about, there are articles that say legend or monster, and this notion that somehow he was abusive to his co-stars. And I really think it has to stop. I think it has to stop, because I think it does a disservice not only to Gene, but I think it does a disservice to the co-stars as well.
Absolutely agree.
The co-stars started a lot of these myths, I think, because in the telling of the stories over the years, it got more and more fun. And also, I think, too, I noticed there was a very recent article.
Excuse me, but, and sometimes they do it for entertainment purposes.
Oh, completely.
I did a show recently, and someone told 2 stories about someone else, and neither one of those stories were true.
Yeah,
they just put it right out there, and I didn't want to put them on the spot in the middle of an interview, but and as the years go on, these stories get more apocryphal, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and it gets very hard to stamp them out. I'm always trying to do myth busting, and the production records from MGM, the Arthur Freed collection, are here at USC, and they counter all of these basically lies about what transpired, but people still hold on to it. And I think quote journalists are really responsible for it, because they keep perpetuating them and they keep this notion out there. And then I think, for example, there's this new documentary about Rita Moreno, and the headlines are saying, talking about the fact that Gene Kelly, she said no to Gene Kelly about cutting her hair for the production. Now, if you when I toured with the country with Rita Moreno for the 60th anniversary of Singin' in the Rain, she was so gracious about. I honestly didn't know these people were going to be around here working. So.
Well, I have a dog too, and so I get it.
I'm so sorry. They didn't.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
But anyway, Rita was always so gracious about the fact that Gene was the first person to give her a role that was not as a Latina, not typecast as a Latina. But now the headlines are all saying, that Gene, it's turned it. I'm sure in the interview she said that, but they're focusing on this thing of saying no to him, and she says I was afraid he might hit me or something. Let me just get him.
It's okay.
Come on.
Well, this is the magic of doing live interviews.
Okay, now they'll just bark outside. So I think that she inevitably said that, made that nod to Gene, but what the pull, what they extracted was this kind of more. I mean, Gene would never hit Rita Moreno, and she knew that. I mean, it's just this kind of this thing, like he was so mad, but I mean, she adores him. She just adores him. So I think we just have to. I think really we just have to look at the work, and then you have to. The other thing I would say is this notion that he had no humility, that he was this arrogant person. There was no arrogance in the guy. He was the most humble person I've ever encountered. I think perhaps they see this swagger in the characters, and they somehow think that that's who Gene Kelly was. And he was always looking out for the underdog, and always thinking of somebody else. And so I think that's really an important thing that it has to go down. I don't like to. My interest isn't in putting him up on some pedestal. He doesn't need to be on a pedestal. Just as
for me personally, and maybe you agree with me. For me, it's about celebrating a person's body of worth. He left so many gifts to us. That's what I want to celebrate. I'm not interested in a lot of the behind the scenes antics, if you will, unless it has to deal with creating the artistry of what they were doing. And if anyone's, if you are working hard on something, we're all human. We deal with frustrations. We deal with things. Some days we have good days. Some days we have bad days. But, it's a shame that people who don't have any frame of reference can just make something up for the sake of making it up. And then it gets transferred from book to book to book.
Well, I think, and Gene wasn't, Gene wasn't a guy, I didn't see good days and bad days. Gene was a professional who came in and did the job. And he knew that, I often hear him described as a perfectionist, and he didn't understand a professional who wasn't. Why would you not be absolutely hit the mark? And he knew, as a choreographer and dancer, if you don't hit your mark and the camera doesn't hit its mark, then you don't have a shot and you have to do it again. And that costs time and that costs money. And Gene, who grew up in the Depression in Pittsburgh, those were abhorrent to him. You don't waste people's time. You don't show up late to the set. You don't waste film and people's time. And so I think that this notion, people always say, oh, well, I hear he was such a taskmaster. And it's like, well, how do you create something like American in Paris without making, it's like herding cattle. You've got all these elements. Or let's just say Hello, Dolly. You've got 12,000 extras there. You've got 8 cameras. You've got Barbara Streisand and Walter Matthau, and you've got to choreograph this entire network, and it's all on your shoulders. The budget, everything is on your shoulders. And he felt that. He was very serious about all of that. And that was one of the reasons he really objected to Xanadu, because when he showed up, there was no script, there was nothing. He said it was the only time that nobody seemed to know what they were doing. And he adored Olivia Newton-John, but this monumental waste of money and time just made no sense to him. And hence, he didn't want to come back and do the number that he did with Olivia. That wasn't in the original. And then when they ran it, everybody said, where's the number with Gene Kelly and Olivia Newton-John? And so he begrudgingly came back, but he said, I'll come back on one condition, that the director and producer are not there. And it was a closed set with just Gene and this Olivia and the camera operator. So he was, so is that considered tough, or is that considered appropriate? I think maybe the reason that we're watching these movies 70 years later is because of that precision. And I think anyone who dances or choreographs or camera operators understand it. I think animators understand it. They know, they deal with little finite things, so they get it. So I'd like if I can do anything, I would like before I kick the bucket, that, as Gene would say, I would like for people to stop using taskmaster and perfectionist as derogatory terms for him, and see that he was a professional, and that's what he brought to the work, regardless of whether he'd had a good day or bad day. He brought that, and I think brought the best out of the people around him and the people he's choreographing for.
Well, I want to ask you, before you met Gene Kelly, were you a fan of his work? Did this come as a result of getting to know him and the work that you've done on keeping his legacy out there? Where were you on the plane of fandom?
I was off the charts on the plane of fandom, because I did not know who Gene Kelly was when I met him. So I was one of the rare people who did not fall over when they heard his name. And in fact, when I first met him, I heard that I was brought on as a writer on a television special about the Smithsonian, and it turned out that Gene was the host narrator. And when I heard that Gene Kelly was going to be the host narrator, I didn't know who that was. I didn't know if it was a man. I didn't know if it was a woman. they kept talking about this thing called Singin' in the Rain that was to die for. I had no clue. I was a very, very nerdy Herman Melville scholar, and I thought that that's what my destiny would be, that I would be teaching Melville in a university at some point, and I was editing his works, but it kind of worked to my favor in a sense, because the director, so many people on the set were desperate to get a marriage proposal out of Gene, that the director put Gene in a room to keep people away from him, and put me in the room with him to keep him company. And so it was this hilarious combination of this woman having no clue who he was. But my pet study in graduate school was etymology and poetry, and those happened to be Gene's pet studies. So we spent the week just playing word games and quoting poetry back and forth. And really, by the middle of the week, I was completely enchanted. I mean, it was Yeats, and it was Dylan Thomas, and it was E.E. Cummings, and just the joy of his language. I mean, it was this very unself-conscious use of language. He loved words. He loved the sound of words, and he would often say words over and over again just to hear them. And so it was this wonderful mix of, you would hear a French phrase or a Latin phrase, but it wasn't to put on airs. It wasn't to show how much he knew. It was just because it was this wonderful tumble of things. And that was life with him, was that. And that's what I think. I mean, I miss a lot of things about him, but I miss that brightness, that Renaissance man. And I miss the romantic side. I mean, he was a true romantic. I mean, he really was, the guy who woke you up in the middle of the night just to go out and look at the full moon, and little valentines and things around the house. So I think, he's kind of full figured. And that's one thing I love about doing the shows, because I think people come out of them having a better understanding. They'll say, I loved him before, but I love him even more now. So it's really fun. Yeah, it's fun. I can't wait to get back on the road again.
Oh, well, we can't wait to get you back to New York.
Yeah.
What was the first film that you saw with him?
I'd have to go back. I have it in the records, and that's what I'm working on right now. I know, because I made him watch everything with me. He didn't like watching his movies. He always saw things he could have done better. So I can't. I'd have to go back. I mean, we looked at everything, and we looked at other people's movies. I mean, and it was really like an education in 101 film, because he would describe how the camera was moved and everything. So it was, I know Summer Stock, the You Wonderful You number, he said to me, that he thought that was perhaps one of the best that he had created, and he did say that he was very proud of the American in Paris Ballet. So.
Well, I want to share one other montage, and this is his magnificent work with props. And then I want to wrap this up with you. So here, Gene Kelly and his props.
That's great.
If he had done nothing else beyond You Wonderful You, that would have been enough. I mean, just phenomenal, phenomenal. Looking back over his body of worth once again, do you have a favorite film?
I don't have a favorite film. People always ask that, but I really have favorite numbers, and you've really highlighted
Yeah.
a lot of them. I mean, it's just what I like is the breadth and the diversity in his choreography and in his dance, because I mean, people don't realize he's a classically trained ballet dancer. He was a tap dancer. He knew jazz. He studied acrobatics and gymnastics and Spanish dance and indigenous dance. And so I think when you put all those together and you see the different choreography, and his ability to use his body in so many different ways, I think that's what's really fun. So obviously the newspaper dance, the tap dancing on roller skates, and Jerry the Mouse. I love Mitzi Gaynor and Jean in Les Girls. That's a hot number with Cole Porter. Nina the Pirate. I mean, the problem is you just got the mop dance. You start listing them all, and my show runs 2 hours and 20 minutes with no interval. And a lot of times people will say, "Oh, well, you have to cut it down to 90 minutes," and it's like, well, which ones do you want to cut out? You know, it's like eliminating your children somehow, because I mean, even Brigadoon, he thought that the pas de deux that he did, the two that he did there with Cicherie, the best that he ever did on film. Something like Moses Supposes with Donald, he thought was the best tap number he ever did. I Got Rhythm with the kids. I mean, this ability to connect with these little French immigrant children who were really French immigrant kids, and just so and the American in Paris Ballet, things that you don't see, Living in a Big Way, which you put on there with Jean traversing with on the construction site. I mean, I think each of those, they're each fun. We could do, basically, I think a show could run several days, because you could just show these numbers and they hold up. They hold up. People love them and they get it. You can show them. I've done the show in Sweden, Luxembourg, Zurich. You know, you show it anywhere, even if people don't speak English. The language is still there. They still understand. So it's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm definitely biased, but I think it's a pretty amazing body of work.
I'm a huge fan. Oh my God. I want to ask you before we wrap everything up today, with the time that you had together, what is the biggest lesson that you learned from Gene Kelly that you carry through with every day of your life since then, and that resonates the loudest in your heart and soul?
I think it's with the way that you carry yourself, the way that you present yourself to the world, the way that you enter a room, the way that you stand up and carry yourself, and that there's a generosity of spirit there, that you listen to people, you engage with people, you don't dismiss people, I think the humanity, and the humility of it. I think that humility of his spirit. There were so many instances where I saw that in real life. You know, that he would small gestures and things that he did that signaled to me that's how you treat people, and there's no arrogance at all. And so I think, and to have a kind of childlike view of things. I think Gene was always the perennial child. I think to have a sense of joy and of trying to bring that to people, that's important. There's value in that.
That's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you for spending an hour with me today on this very special day. as we celebrate Gene Kelly. When my dear friend Carol Channing passed away, and at her memorial, Tyne Daly said something that resonates with me. She said, "Don't think of them as gone. Think of them as being in the next room." And they're always there. I mean, go to YouTube. There's so much there. When he's on Turner Classic Movies, he's there. Watch these films. Enjoy this. I want to thank all of you who joined me today. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, and if you haven't done so already, please go to my website, richardskipper.com. Sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me and other markets. I want to let everyone know that tomorrow night at 7 p.m., I am going to be celebrating singer-songwriter, tribute artist Jimmy James. Phenomenal.
Love Jimmy.
Isn't he phenomenal?
Tell him hi for me.
I certainly will. I'm very looking forward to this tomorrow night. I always end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the second name that pops up, reach out and call that person. Not with an email, not with the text, not with a private message. Pick up the phone, call them, and let them know what they mean in your lives. As my dear friend David Friedman says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. So you never know what someone's going through or anything. Love to your dogs.
Thank you.
I'm glad that they added atmosphere today.
Well,
but before we end the show, I want to ask you, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to mention to expound upon anything that we talked about today, anything that we didn't mention that you wish that we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching and listening at this time. And Patricia, I know today was celebrating Gene, but I celebrate you.
well,
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Well, I do hope people will join me on social media, because it is a conversation. I do respond. I read everything. I do post everything myself. And so it is a way to interact. And I think engagement is very important now, especially now. And that I will also post the notices, for the shows. We're pushing to get back out in 2020. So I will put the notices there, and obviously connect with you too. But the symphonic show, and then with hope, fingers crossed, the book I will get out if I stop doing all of these other things. And then there are a couple little surprises that we have coming down the pike for people. So there's a lot happening, I think, and I think 2022 is going to be a great year for a lot of things. So I just ask people to join me in the journey, because it's really fun and interesting, and I think it's important. I think it's important for us to be connected. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
thank you, Richard. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Goodbye.